Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome into today's live stream that we are doing together with our friends from Hashdex. And we're going to be talking about really the world of crypto and where it's moving towards in this momentum of ETFs, as well as these crypto indexes. I think today is a really interesting day because we're getting all types of movement in the crypto world. So I'm excited to hear from our experts, Jerry and Samir, on here today from the Hashdex team as we just talk about crypto, but also about indexes and everything else that's coming. If you're unfamiliar, we've done a couple of shows together with them in the past, so you can go take a look at the tickers real quick. If you just go onto your Robinhood or whatever platform you're on and you type in Hashdex, you will see the two tickers, DEFI, that is the Bitcoin ETF, and then NCIQ, that is the NASDAQ Crypto Index ETF, which is market cap weighted and right now tracks Bitcoin and Ethereum. But also, hopefully, we'll have more assets coming into it over time to create this fuller index. And really, you guys were the first to get approval in this area, others following in your footsteps. So super excited to have you on. Before we go any further, would love to give you each the opportunity to give yourselves a brief intro, tell people, where you focus and what you do. Samir, would you like to go first?
Yeah, no, sure. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you guys. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Hashdex. Okay, so I've been around Hashdex since the early beginning, 2018. And Hashdex is a crypto-focused asset manager with presence in multiple countries. And now that the regulatory environment is improving in the US, it looks like it's opening up for crypto ETFs. We're very proud to bring this product to market and expand our presence in the US.
Fantastic. And then could you give people a little bit more color real quick before we go over to Jerry, just about yourself and what the day-to-day looks like for you and what you focus on when it comes to all these products?
Yeah, so I lead the investment, research, and product teams at Hashdex. Okay, so a lot of working like on the product development side, like especially looking into how regulators are seeing different products, having conversations with regulators from like multiple countries to bring product to market. The investment teams are dedicated into the investment process of our products. We have passive and active products, so that's all like under my responsibility. And we also have a research team that is dedicated to crypto education to professional investors. Okay, so they spend a lot of time explaining the investment thesis around crypto to professional investors and bridging this gap between TradFi and the crypto
Yeah, absolutely. It's really is what you guys are doing, is creating that bridge. And we'll talk about it a little bit more here, what needs to happen there, what the holdup is. Jerry, do you want to go ahead and give some instruction of yourself as well, your thoughts when it comes to all this?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on. And so Jerry O'Shea with Hashdex, I'm head of global insights here. And so what that means is I focus mostly on our educational efforts, thought leadership, trying to really communicate out to professional investors specifically. As Samir mentioned, we've got investors in Latin America, Europe, and the US. So conveying to those audiences the opportunity that we see in the crypto asset class.
Awesome. And we're talking a little bit about this opportunity. And so where do you guys see, the true opportunity? Somebody might say, hey, I can buy, Bitcoin, I can buy Ethereum, but institutions maybe don't have that opportunity. Like, where do you see the true opportunity in everything that you're doing? And what does it allow people to do that perhaps they couldn't do otherwise?
So we believe that crypto is a generational investment opportunity. Okay, so it's a new asset class. It's not often that we see a new asset class coming to market, and it started like more than 10 years ago with Bitcoin. Over time, it has become more and more into the mainstream investors overall. I think the last 2-3 years has been critical for that. And the investors, especially if you look at traditional professional investors, when they're advising clients, they still have a big challenge to understand crypto. Okay, how come this thing that was used by criminals like 10 years ago is now an asset class? It's something that the government is having a reserve and a stockpile. So there's a lot of challenges trying to understand this and how to fit that into a traditional portfolio. That's a big part of what we do. Okay, so help traditional investors to understand this as a new asset class. What is the investment thesis around this? And then bring products that help them invest into this asset class. We believe that one of the core beliefs here is that crypto is way bigger than just Bitcoin. Okay, so there's a lot of different opportunities in crypto assets. We're very early, so still very, very early in that cycle. I like to compare this with the internet in the 90s. Okay, so it's like in the 90s, all the thing you had was email. Email like sounded like the only big thing that the internet could do for us. And now we are like 20, 30 years later. Email is still part of our day to day, but was not the application of the internet that created the most value for us. We believe we're kind of in the same stage with crypto, in which Bitcoin is the big player. For some, it's the only thing that's around and the only reason why crypto exists. But there's so many applications beyond crypto, and the critical point for those traditional investors, they don't have time to understand all those nuances. So that's why we design an index. Okay, so it's a passive investment. From a very credible brand from NASDAQ. It has the same governance structure as the NASDAQ 100. It's completely independent from Hashdex. It's run by NASDAQ. And this way, you get a broad exposure to the asset class. So it doesn't matter who's the winners. And if Bitcoin is now the big player, maybe Solana is coming. Doesn't matter. You just get a passive exposure to the asset class. So this is how we think professional investors should approach this. Up until now, they've been having a hard time getting exposure to this asset. They're being mostly reactive to clients asking, but this is changing. And that's why we're positioning a product like this.
Yeah, there's a lot that you just mentioned there. One of the things that you hit on was that we're even having a crypto reserve created now. So definitely more acceptance in this country. Jerry, curious to get your thoughts there. Is it everything you thought it would be? Do you think that more has to be done on the crypto reserve side for it to be an effective proponent of crypto?
Yeah, so I think one thing I think is always helpful. I always kind of view Hashdex as tracking like the trajectory of this industry in a way that's somewhat unique. And by that I mean, back in 2021, Samir mentioned the Nasdaq Crypto Index. We first launched that down in Brazil because the securities regulators down there recognized early on how important it was to give investors regulated access to these types of products. We saw that happen a few years ago in Europe as well. And now, obviously, as you mentioned, the regulatory and legislative landscape has changed dramatically in the US. And so we feel like, maybe one of the biggest differences is that in Latin America and Europe, it's mostly been the financial regulators, whereas now in the US, we've got essentially the entire, administration, the majority of Congress that are all very pro crypto. And so I think the news about the reserve that came out over the weekend, so there'll be a Bitcoin strategic reserve and then a digital asset stockpile, I think does really help, one, underscore how important Bitcoin is as an asset, but also that, these other assets, while they're not, in the specifically in the reserve, the fact that the US government sees it important enough to not sell them and to really embrace this industry, I think is absolutely huge. And we still have a decent way to go in terms of regulatory clarity and hopefully some legislative efforts, whether it's the market structure bill or even around stable coins. All of that stuff is already underway. And I think, we'll see a lot of progress with that this year. But generally speaking, I think for us and our investors, being in an environment where we're not constantly on the defensive is going to just, at the end of the day, be a huge positive for investors. The SEC is going to do their job diligently as they have to make sure the protections in place for all of these products. And we're excited to be part of those conversations. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's we're kind of in a completely different. We are in a completely different regime than we have been. And so it's just the beginning. So even though it seems like the last month and a half has been about 10 years so far, it is very much the beginning. And there's a lot of work that's going to go on from a regulatory perspective in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, I have so many questions around regulations and also the reaction of the market to them. You guys are live in Brazil, like you mentioned, and that has 9 assets inside of it. Is that correct? What needs to
Yes.
happen for investors in the US to be able to get similar type exposure? I guess if you had to lay it out as like kind of like a step-by-step process.
Oh, that's a great question, because this is exactly what the SEC is looking into right now. So um, they are completely changing how they approach crypto regulations, how they approach the approval of crypto ETPs. And one of the critical matters to define is where they're going to put the bar. Okay, so is it like any crypto asset can have an ETP, like from Bitcoin to meme coins, or where is they're going to like put the bar in? And the bar might be different between single asset ETPs and basket ETPs, like index, like the ones we have. And so this is the big question that the regulators are having to decide right now. We have a proposal, an active proposal with the SEC to potentially expand this product beyond just Bitcoin and Ether. And we have some interactions that are scheduled with the crypto task force to propose some paths, some ways that they could approach this matter. But right now, it's a big uncertainty. So the whole market is trying to guess what the SEC is going to do. Hopefully, it's going to be something that makes sense, right? Because they're trying to approach this in a very productive way. So I think that probably the coming 2 months are going to be very critical for us to understand what the next steps are. But we believe we're very close to, potentially having the regulators allowing more crypto ETPs, allowing more crypto assets to be part of the basket ETPs, like the NCIQ.
How big of a difference is it getting it approved as an ETP versus an ETF?
So it's a technical matter. Okay, so ETP stands for exchange traded product, and ETFs is exchange traded fund. There's a nuance in the regulation, like 40 Act regulation. Normally, like they are related to funds, and 33 Act products, like the Bitcoin ETFs, they're technically ETPs. They're not funds. So it's just a nuance in how you classify those assets. It works the same. It acts the same. So it's the same thing as a fund, as a product.
Makes sense. By the way, for those that are looking for more details here, if you want to read through the prospectus, understand how these products work, you can go right to www.hashdex.com. Just threw that up there. The tickers, as a reminder, DeFi and NCIQ as well. Those are on the bottom left. So just making things easy to find for people that are doing their research here. I'll throw in one more question and then I'll circle over because there's a couple other guys that are up here that I want to bring into the conversation as well. But for me, just as all this is happening, it seems like we're getting a lot of good news for crypto, right? A more friendly regulatory landscape, crypto reserve. But the short-term move has certainly, not reflected that, right? You're seeing kind of a sell-off and a pullback into this. Do you guys read this as a buy the rumor, sell the news type situation? I'm just curious, why you think larger investors in the crypto landscape seem to be pulling money out, or is that something happening with the larger market with tariffs? Yeah, just curious to hear your guys' thoughts.
I think this is mostly a reaction across the whole market. Okay, so all risk assets are being penalized right now because there's so many uncertainties, especially with this new administration and new policies around tariffs and this like the tensions in Ukraine, and how like this is shaping and transforming the basically like the relations between the countries, right, and the global order in the end. So we're seeing a phase of significant transformations. So the Trump administrations, they're moving at tech speed, like they like to say, and on tech speed, you normally move fast and break things, and then you fix things, right? So that's what we see right now, and this is causing a lot of uncertainties in the market, not only in crypto, but if you look across all asset classes, we're seeing a lot of uncertainty, and I think it's just a part of that. Of course, there's some frustration around the actual measures of the administration towards crypto. I think some people were expecting more, expecting that the U.S. government would announce reserves and then just start buying Bitcoin. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. Okay, so there's only so much that the administration can do without changes in law, and that's the next step that we think is going to happen. So I think this is a mix of like too much expectation on the short term around like what the government can do for crypto, and also just so many uncertainties we're seeing on the macro environment. Nothing related to the crypto investment thesis. See, like nothing has changed in how we see crypto in the long term, and how like Bitcoin is evolving as an emerging digital store of wealth. How we're seeing smart contract platforms like this underlying new platform that's going to transform this financial system. So on the fundamental side, the thesis is only getting stronger. Okay, so that's why we're extremely positive about this, especially for investors that are looking for the medium to long term.
Got it. Jerry, did you have thoughts there too?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like, I think, the other thing too that we've seen is a lot of the activity has been short-term trading activity. Like if you look back, the long-term holders of Bitcoin in particular, are not the ones selling here. And so I think, as Samir described, there's the disconnect between the prices. There's a lot of factors contributing to that, the tariffs, the macro environment, so on and so forth. But I think ultimately, like one kind of maybe an overly simple way that I look at is we're just still so early. And that, the fact that you had this reserve come out and digital assets stockpile, and that to me is some of the best long-term news for this asset class we've ever had. And so I think, it'll take a while for maybe folks to really appreciate what that is and what that means. But, as Samir said, the long-term thesis for this asset class, nothing is really shaking that right now. It's more of just kind of the short-term stuff. And at Hashdex, we very much, when we talk to investors, encourage them to focus on the long term, especially in this asset class. It's volatile. It'll continue to be volatile. And so I think the things that we're seeing happening, whether it's the reserve, whether it's traditional banks getting into custody, all those types of factors are really driving the long-term investment thesis for this asset class. And we see them all as extreme positives.
Got it. I appreciate that answer. I definitely could keep going, but I want to bring in the other guys here. I'll circle back around. Evan, do you have some questions here?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for doing this. It's a fantastic conversation as always. I have a couple questions around the crypto index itself, NCIQ, and then maybe just kind of, I know you guys were talking about it more internationally, how it's been around in places like Brazil for a long time. So I want to hear, before I kind of dig into the US version of it, like internationally, I know you guys talked about Brazil being the first place you launched the crypto index, and kind of how you guys choose what's in it is based on local regulations and kind of other stuff like that. We can actually go into it. So I'm curious if it's in other places around the world, and how the holdings within the kind of crypto index around the world kind of shapes, differs. Maybe if there's some countries that you think like the makeup of it, just due to what local regulations are, looks better than some of the other ones. I'm curious if that nuances have arrived so far.
Yeah, no, so we had those nuances for a long time, but right now I think like this is mostly aligned, especially when you look at the European countries and Brazil. So there's only one methodology for the Nasdaq Crypto Index, the global version of this, and then we have a US version, which is limited to only Bitcoin and Ether right now. On the global version, it's a rules-based methodology. So it has like very stringent eligibility criteria, and the governance is all run by Nasdaq. Okay, so Hashdex has no control over which assets are included or excluded from the index. And one of the eligibility rules for this global version of the NCI is that the asset must be eligible to be listed in some European exchanges. Okay, so this is part of like the eligibility criteria. This limits the universe of assets that the index can include, okay, in this portfolio composition. And this is very, for a long time, this has been a very restrictive rule. But recently, we've been seeing like the European exchanges being more flexible around which assets are included in crypto ETP. So hopefully, the SEC will have an approach like this, so defining some rules that then the index providers can have eligibility criteria on, and then select those assets. But for a long time, the compositions would be different between Brazil and Europe, but right now they have the same composition. Okay, and this is all rules based. There's no discretion, no qualitative filters on it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And how do you guys go about weighting in the index? Is it price weighted, market cap weighted? How does that go about? Some sort of.
So it's market cap weighted. Yeah, it's market cap weighted with no caps, no limits. Okay, so it's really designed to provide a beta exposure to the market. So wherever the market is, if the market is 90% Bitcoin, then the index is going to be 90% Bitcoin. Over time, we believe that other assets are going to be included in the index, and their weight is going to increase. So that's what we believe as fundamental investors in this technology, that the weight of Bitcoin in the index will go down. But if we're wrong, and Bitcoin is the only big thing and keeps growing in its participation, then the index will reflect. Okay, so it's a passive way to have exposure to the overall market.
And then follow-up question, or a little bit different. For people who are buying the US version of this, will it, like when other stuff gets approved in the US, will it be added into this NCIQ in this index, or will a new ticker be created? How will that process work?
No, so the idea, the design of the product is that as new assets are eligible to be included in the index, the fund will also include this in the index. Okay, so included in the product. So for each asset that Nasdaq decides that's going to be included in the index, the fund is going to request approval to the SEC to have those assets in the portfolio. Okay, the SEC might allow them, might not allow them to be incorporated in the portfolio. So that really is going to depend on regulatory approval. But the idea is that this product is evolutive. So it will, over time, as the regulators approve and as the environment improves, the idea is that this fund will have more assets without having to change the ticker or having to launch a new product and then decommission this one.
I was just going to add to, I think this year we've seen well over 50 dozens of ETF applications. And so I think, having a index like this with the methodology backing it, I think is going to be really attractive to a lot of investors, because we've already seen a lot of noise with all the meme coins and everything else in this space. And so I think having one product that's accessible and will give you the broad exposure to this asset class is something we've heard from investors in Latin America and Europe, obviously, about this. And I think for our US investors, it's going to be increasingly appealing.
Good questions there, Evan. Hitting a lot on the regulatory side. I think that is important. I had a quick question. I noticed that you got your expense ratio super low on it. So the expense ratio on DeFi right now I saw listed as closer to 0.94, but then the expense ratio on NCIQ was just 0.25, I believe. And I was just curious how you think through that, and that's definitely a competitive ratio there.
Yeah, no. So the idea is the total expense ratio for the NCIQ is 0.5%. Okay, and we have implemented a fee waiver until the end of this year. Okay, to 0.25%. That's the same fee you get on a Bitcoin ETF. Okay, so you get the benefit of diversification, one product to have this diversified exposure, and you're not paying more than you would pay in a single asset Bitcoin exposure. And so that's the idea that we're offering, like this waiver for this period. We believe that over this year we're going to have a lot of advances in the regulatory side that hopefully are going to allow this product to have more assets. And then the steady state fee for this product would be something like 0.5%. So the idea is really to scale the product, to get people to understand this, to know what an index is, to get used to this without having to pay a premium on the first investment, on the first year. Okay, so that's the whole idea of this product.
Got it. That's a nice bonus for people. Emp, do you have some questions you want to throw in here?
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate the opportunity here, Samir and Jerry. It's always great to hear directly from the source instead of doing some of my own research. So my first thing I wanted to ask was, where's everything? Where's the custody of everything? Are you guys using a major institution to hold all of those assets in place?
That's a great question. So the policy that Hashdex normally implements for all their funds, all our ETFs in all countries, is diversified custody. Okay, so instead of having only one institutional custodian, we like to have multiple options, and then spread those assets across those custodians. So we have a network of custodians we can use. For this product specifically, we have two custodians. We have BitGo and Coinbase custody, and the assets, they are split across those two custodians. We could have assets on each of those custodians, and we use our own proprietary risk methodology to divide those assets between those custodians. So 100% of the assets are in cold storage, institutional grade custody with insurance policy. We don't do like self custody or any of those, more retail side procedures of storing crypto assets. It's all institutional grade, and we currently use those two
Yeah,
custodians.
that makes perfect sense. That's a fantastic answer there. My next question around that kind of custody and investing in crypto type of thing. Would you say what are the other advantages around an ETF product like this? I think one of the first ones you basically hinted at it there in a while. You have a team that has got multiple custody around. You're spreading out the risk. You've got a lot of layers of security. So for the average retail investor, they get a little bit concerned about those things, right? Wait, is my wallet here? Are my funds here? There's a lot of at least for the people I deal with and run conversations with, there's a little bit of that. So obviously, I think the ETF is a great way to be able to invest in crypto with that security aspect. But what would the other advantages, to your point there?
Yeah, so like we said, we believe crypto is a generational opportunity. Okay, so it's something that we need to look for the long term. We think investors should be looking into investing this for 5 to 10 years. Okay, and I think the worst risk you can have, the worst outcome you might have when investing in crypto is lose all your investment because you didn't store it right, or you kept in an exchange that was hacked or went bankrupt. And this happens very often, right? We just saw with another exchange getting hacked those last few days. So having an asset manager doing a professional management of those assets mitigates those risks. Okay, so we do this in a way that if you're a retail investor trying to replicate what we do, it's not going to be available for you. It's just too expensive for a normal retail client to have the same level of professional management of those crypto assets on the custody and everything. So if you're investing for the long term, this is very important, okay? Because if something happens to you, you need to make sure that your assets are available to your loved ones, okay? And if you do self-custody, then you need to leave the map of, how to, have access to those assets after you're not around, right? So this is one of the big differences of investing in crypto through an ETF or holding directly. And with an index like the NCIQ, you get another benefit, which is the diversification. Okay, so it's one investment. You don't need to be tracking which assets are popular now or buying on the hype. You just get a broad market exposure, and you can rest assured that in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever the assets are, the most relevant ones, they're going to be in the index. Okay, so you don't need to be picking the assets or doing an active management or every now and then having to select those assets, which assets are going to include or remove from the portfolio. You can leave this to a rules-based, very institutional grade index methodology like the Nasdaq Crypto Index. So this is an additional benefit of an index product like the NCIQ.
Yeah, and just to add, I think the word that always comes to mind when people ask about benefits of the ETFs is accessibility, and I kind of think about that in two ways. One, just being able to, you don't have to be an accredited investor, obviously, to get access to this, but also, from our perspective, we've been doing this exclusively in the digital asset space, for 7+ years at this point. And, as Samir was talking about, like how we choose custodians and things like that, this is kind of like built into our DNA at this point. And, there's space for thematic asset managers of all types, that investors choose. And I think the accessibility, being able to access like our educations, if you have a question, you call Samir, like that type of thing, I think is going to be really important for this asset class, because it's not broadly understood well. It has a lot of volatility. And one of the things we really pride ourselves is kind of being there for investors when they have questions about what's going on, and proactively, going out and talking to them about what the market's doing. And so that's one thing that we have spent a lot of our energy and time focused on, is making sure that clients and potential clients are getting the types of resources that they need to be comfortable to invest in this asset class.
Awesome. Yeah. Last question here, if you don't mind, Gav. Samir, you mentioned earlier bridging that gap between TradFi and DeFi, right? And we've seen that start to kind of happen a little bit with these ETFs, I feel like. And I think what Jerry was just saying there may be the big key to continue that forward, because I think some of the TradFi reservations have always been around the security of it, right? Would you say that that's kind of the last little piece to get this bridge built? Is 2025 the year that we finally kind of bridge these two sides and stop them from maybe bickering so much?
I wish it was simple like this. This is going to take a long time. A big component of our investment thesis around crypto is the generational shift. Okay, so we are going through a generational shift in our society. So a new generation that was internet native. Okay, so maybe my generation was the last one that saw the offline and the online, that saw like a world without cell phones, without the internet. And this is changing, right? And this new generation, they have different preferences. The older generation, the ones that are now in decision-making positions, they are calling the shots, they're making the policies. They grew in an analog space where it's very hard for them to think about digital assets, how something that you can touch have value, okay? And they're like, some of them are still trying to figure out the internet. Okay, so I think this is a very gradual approach. As we see more of this new generation coming to decision-making positions, is going to be easier. As they have more political power, more voting power, they're also going to influence more the politicians. So this is happening, but I think it's going to take a long time until this is like fully integrated. I don't think that in 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about DeFi. It's all going to be finance. It's just going to be the traditional financial rails. You're going to be using blockchain and not paper to run your financial transactions. But this is probably going to be gradual. This year, of course, is going to be very critical because the policy in the US is changing. And I think the first big change that really is going to change our day-to-day and how we use crypto on a day-to-day is going to be stablecoins. Okay, so stablecoins is a big thing outside of the US, especially in emerging countries that have a hard time assessing the US dollar. And with this regulatory clarity coming from the US, with the banks now being able to start offering crypto services, with the Stablecoin Act, we think that the financial institutions, the US financial institutions, will start to issue stablecoins. And that's going to transform completely the payment system in the US. And probably going to see people doing more payments with stable coins just because it's easier, it's cheaper, it's more efficient. You can do 24/7, you get final settlement. Like, it's just way more efficient than using credit cards or using any other form of payment. And probably this is going to be the first big application of crypto that's going to become mainstream. And hopefully this is going to start this year.
Wonderful. Jerry, Samir, I appreciate the opportunity to ask some questions. Gav, I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah, since we are on a live stream, gives me the opportunity to also real quick actually share my screen on here and take a quick look at the website right here. So just for those that wanted to go in, hashdex.com, you can see the products listed throughout here. And I just wanted to show people a couple of things. First off, if you're going ahead and doing your research, there's a lot of good information here. Got your documents, performance, composition, all that stuff. You can go, click into how to invest. and it'll take you down here to a variety of different areas. There's also some insights. One of the things that I think is really interesting on here is you can see for Brazil, the Hashdex crypto ETF that you do have approved there. I believe that this is the allocation across the board, so people can see when we talk about market cap weighted what it would look like if the other 7 were to be approved and added in. So right now you have Bitcoin and Ethereum, and on the current one, Bitcoin is within, I don't know, somewhere in the 80% range, I believe, closer to 90% almost. Here you can see it be brought down to a little bit over 75%. Ethereum around 11%. You'd have Ripple in there, Solana, Cardano, so on and so forth. And this is as of today, I believe. So it looks like it does live update. So 3/10/2025. So yeah, just wanted to show people, the other stuff that's involved in there. And, it's not huge exposure to something like a Uniswap or an Avalanche, but it's more about that diversification across the board and allowing that if these were to grow, that you could see that exposure increase to them without having to actually do any changes yourself, as it would just rebalance in that portfolio. You can also take a look at some of the performance here on a couple of different areas, just kind of seeing that over time. And obviously crypto, despite the previous month, has performed pretty well over the last 6 months, 12 months, years along those lines. So there also is that return that people will be looking for. So just wanted to show them through that. And then of course, if you want to go ahead and click through, you can see the Bitcoin ETF. You can see, different other pieces just by going through all of the products up there, and just continue scrolling through the team. So just some of the pieces: over $1 billion AUM, over 350,000 investors involved here. These are the original guys to get to the crypto ETF world, and then also the originals with the crypto index. So definitely a very trusted voice, and that's just something I wanted to point out as we walk through that. For those that are doing their research, Samir, Jerry, where do you recommend that they start for something like this? What type of documentation should they read through? How should they conduct due diligence? It's a bit of a unique product.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the product, and we'd love Jerry to outline where they can find like educational information around crypto, because I think this is very critical and we have a lot. But on the product, we recommend people look at the prospectus, okay? So it has all the information about the product. It has all the risk factors. Everything related to the product is described in prospectus. So I think this is the go-to place if you want to see more information and understand more about what the product is. The prospectus is available on our website, so hashdex.com. You can go to the NCIQ page, and you have all the information, and you have access to the prospectus.
Yeah, and I think for we have an insights hub on our website that I encourage people to go to. For Samir, once a month, writes a notes from the CIO that talks about the most relevant topics in the market going on, and what that means for the investment case for crypto. And we have a number of other kind of regular pieces, including on Mondays we put out the Hash Insider, which has a relevant chart from the week that kind of gets at some of the hot topics, from the previous week, some of the news stories and how that impacted prices, that type of thing. So if you're looking for kind of a week-to-week thing, that's a great resource. And then if you're looking for kind of longer term, the investment case type of articles, Samir's notes from the CIO, we have a primers section as well on the website that has a lot of educational content. And always feel free to reach out to us if there's something you want that's not there, or you have questions about anything we have on the website.
Perfect. All right, we can go into some closing questions and thoughts here. I think we've covered things pretty extensively. Before we do that, I would ask Samir, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd want to make sure people are aware of here today?
No, that's pretty much it. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to discuss, we're always available. Just reach out. We're always available to have those discussions.
Yeah, I would double down on that. It's great working with, obviously Defiance Analytics. Shout out to Jacob for making this connection, and thank you to him for being a sponsor of ours and bringing companies like Hashdex into the mix. One of the things I do like is that you guys are making yourselves accessible to the public, right? People can ask questions to our spaces. There's chats and stuff like this. They can reach out directly, which I think is really important. So I would agree with that as well. Jerry, any final comments from yourself?
No, I maybe just add that at Hashdex Twitter is a great place to send us messages as well. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting and fast moving year. So we'll try to keep up with everything that's going on. But like I said, like, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you've got questions about what the market's doing, any of our products, any of that stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. The accounts is a great place. Evan, do you have any other comments on this one?
No, nothing more from me. I just appreciate everyone for joining in. Wherever you're watching this, make sure you're following or subscribing or whatever. And I'm really excited to watch what stocks get or what cryptos get added to the index in the US over the next couple weeks and months. And I have a feeling it's once the floodgates open, it might be like a couple at once. It feels like that's going to be this year. So a lot of stuff you never know with regulation, but I don't know. It feels like it will be an interesting year for this this crypto index, and I'm excited to watch it. I appreciate you guys coming on here, and I hope we get to talk again.
Love it. Emp?
No, all good for me. Just once again, thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Samir, for coming on. Thanks for the time and the opportunity to ask some questions here, get to know you guys a little bit more, and learn about Hashdex a little bit more.
Yeah, I would echo all the thoughts here. I encourage everybody to use this as a start to your due diligence journey here. We don't make any recommendations or endorsements of specific strategies or products on our spaces or video streams, but we do give amazing direct access to the people behind these products and do our best to ask as many questions as possible that we think would be helpful for investors. So use this as a start. Go out and do your own research. Be confident if you're going to invest in something. If you have questions, you can always consult, financial advisor. You can talk with the team as well directly. And we look forward to seeing you on more of these. So that's going to do it for today. We'll wrap this one up here. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.